Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have an experimental kitchen video for you, and today we are making key lime pie. So these are actually extremely healthy mini key lime pies. They're gluten-free, dairy-free, refined sugar-free. I really only added in stevia. There's not even like agave or maple syrup. It's very low on the glycemic index. It is very tart and it does taste fantastic. So if you guys are ready, I'm going to teach you how I created these mini key lime pies. Okay, so I started off by taking Brazil nuts. Brazil nuts are actually very high in a nutrient called selenium, and it's a mineral. It really helps with men's health. So if you are a guy or you're cooking for a man, then these are really great. So you can actually sub in any nut you want. You can use macadamia nuts, hazelnuts, any nut, and what you want to do is just pulsate it. You want to get it into a chopped form. You want some chunks in it, but you don't want whole pieces of nut whatsoever. You want to break it down, and that's what we're going to start to make our crust with. So since we actually don't want to blend up those nuts anymore, we're going to transfer them into another container. So then from there, we're going to add almond butter and coconut oil into our blender. And then we want to add a gluten-free flour, and we want to add some salt. So I like to use Himalayan sea salt. So you want to just blend this together. You can actually mix it with your hand. That's totally fine. You can just like stir it around with a bowl and a spoon, and you'll probably get the same results. Once that's all blended together, we're going to add the Brazil nuts right back in, and you really want to check for consistency. So I was a little bit scared that this wasn't going to end up sticky enough, and it actually did. And it's because the coconut oil will actually get hard when you freeze it, and that ends up turning into a really great crust. And the almond butter acts as a sticky in our crust. So a lot of people like to use medjool dates in their crusts, but medjool dates are very high in glucose, in sugar, and so that's going to spike your blood sugar. So I wanted to keep these on the low level of the glycemic index just because I know it helps people with eczema a lot to keep things lower on the glycemic index. Alright guys, so from there I took a muffin tin and I started to press in the dough, in the crust, into the muffin tin. And so what you actually want to do is make sure you go up the sides a lot more than I did, because we end up making a lot more of the filling than the crust held when I created it the very first time. So you want to actually go up the sides a little bit more than I did, and you're just going to press it around with your fingers. So I actually did a trial run just to make sure that they will come out of the muffin tin. And while I did put a little bit of coconut oil down first, they actually were perfectly fine. They stuck to themselves, not the pan. And so I didn't have to put them in little paper muffin cups. And so I put a couple in, froze them, and then I took a knife and pried them up just to see if they would, stick to themselves. So they did, turned out great, and I ended up filling them. So the recipe that this makes is about 6 of these. 6 little mini key lime pies. So while you're freezing those, we're gonna go ahead and start on the filling. So what I did here is I actually just chopped up my limes. So I chopped them in half first, and a few of them I chopped into fourth because I didn't know how this was gonna do, but that ended up being the perfect method ever. So what you need is a nut milk bag. And so if you've ever made your at-home plant-based milk, you'll probably have one of these. It's kind of like a cheesecloth. And so you're gonna put that off to the side because we're gonna use that later. So now just literally put the rind, the lime, everything, the rind, the lime, all of it goes into your blender, and we're gonna blend up all of it. And this is gonna give you the most sour, rich lime flavor ever. And so when you finally have it all blended up, what we're gonna do then is put it in our nut milk bag and wring it out. And we're gonna wring out all the liquid and leave all of the rind, the pulp, all of it, and just leave a nice liquid. So then from there, we're gonna have to heat this up because agar is our thickener, and it works when heated. So agar is actually a sea vegetable, and it kind of acts as a vegan gelatin. And so we're gonna use that in this recipe, so we want to start heating up that lime juice. So go ahead and grab a saucepan. I'm using a cast iron skillet. Anything really works as long as you can heat it up. So put it on medium heat, and we're gonna go ahead and stir in the lime juice, and from there we're gonna add in coconut cream. And so I made this mistake of not actually putting my coconut milk in the fridge first. So if you take your coconut milk and you put it in the fridge, all of the cream floats to the top and it kind of gets hard at the very top. So you see me kind of just like fishing out the coconut cream. So to do better, you should just put it in the fridge and then you can easily scoop out the cream. And so this recipe turned out a little tart. I'll tell you this again later. So you might want to add more coconut cream than I did to cut the sourness a little bit, but that depends on your taste. Some people love sour. So then you're gonna want to add in arrowroot starch. And so a lot of people, when they're making sauces like this or things that need to get thickened like pies, they're gonna use cornstarch. Not a fan of cornstarch, don't recommend it for eczema. What I recommend instead is an arrowroot starch, and so I put about a tablespoon of that right in there to thicken it up. So then I put in, let's say about a teaspoon of vanilla just to give it more flavor, and then I added in about 10 drops of stevia liquid. I wouldn't add more than this because I think the sweetness needs to be cut by a fat, which is why I recommend the coconut cream. Otherwise, it's just going to be very sweet, but also very sour. So keep your stevia to a minimum. And I just use these little drops. They are actually pure stevia, which can be hard to find. A lot of the stevia and the monk fruit can be combined with other sweeteners that I'm not so fond of, like erythritol. I use it sometimes, but it's not the best. After it reaches a boil, then we're gonna add in the agar. So I used a tablespoon of it. Make sure you're really stirring. Just like continuously stir your filling, stir it. And when it's finally done, I poured it back into a bowl just so that it could cool down a little bit. You don't want it to cool down too much, otherwise it's gonna thicken, but thicken in the bowl you put it in and not in our little pies. So I took the pie crusts out of the freezer and I just filled them all up. I got a little lazy at this point and I just wanted to put the filling in, and so I actually have one tart that's just filling, and so I don't know how that's gonna turn out. Don't do what I do in that way. What you should do is just fill them up to the very top and leave the crust, because then we're gonna have to dig the knife in to pop them out again. So just word to the wise. And so then after your filling is in them, you need to pop it back in the freezer. You can pop it in there for a couple of hours. It can be stored in the fridge, but it's gonna be more on the creamy side. It depends on the texture you're looking for. I ended up popping mine in for about 2 hours, taking them out and trying them, and they're delicious. Okay, so my impression of this is it's super sour, so I think I needed to add more stevia liquid to it, but I actually just sprinkled monk fruit on top of it, so hopefully it makes it a little bit sweeter. It is delicious. I actually really do love it, and I think the crust is the best part, but I highly recommend that you get your edges up farther than I did and then fill it up to the edges, because I don't think the ones that I just like filled over did that well. I was honestly just being lazy, but cheers. I highly recommend you guys try to make these yourself and let me know how you like it. If key lime pie is your thing, you're gonna like these, especially if you like sour things.
Crushing